Are you struggling with weight loss despite eating healthy, exercising, and even taking all your medications correctly? Well, if so, it is not your fault. In fact, most conventional weight loss advice was never designed for people with diabetes. And if you are following it and you have diabetes, you may in fact be making it much worse for yourself. So we need to address the real issue here. Weight loss is really not as simple as just cutting calories or moving more. And if you've been trying to lose weight, you may have come into contact with this. This may be your experience today. For diabetics, the game is different. It's actually about something called insulin resistance and metabolic health. Now, if you're familiar with these terms, wonderful. And if not, don't worry, because I'm going to break them down for you here in the video. Now, what happens is, if you have diabetes, your body gets stuck in fat storage mode. So unfortunately, there's just no amount of dieting or cardiovascular exercise that is going to change that fact. So we actually need to have a completely different approach for weight loss when it comes to diabetes. And I'd like to argue that this starts by avoiding 4 very key mistakes that a lot of people are making, unfortunately. And so we need to break them down one by one to really understand how each of them works. If you're not familiar with me, or if you haven't been here before, hey, I'm Dr. Anna. I'm a medical doctor and a nutrition professional, and I make these videos on this channel because I'm here dedicating my time to help diabetics take control of their health without dealing with extreme diets, unnecessary medications, and not addressing the core root issue of diabetes. And now I work with patients every single day on these issues. I see patients in the hospital and in my clinic, and we're always addressing the issues of diabetes. And so I've really seen why people are struggling with this so much. And if you are realizing that you've been stuck, you're ready for these 4 mistakes. Let's dive right in. So here's why losing weight with diabetes is different than somebody without diabetes. The mistake a lot of people are making is that assuming that weight loss is the same for everybody. But as I said before, weight loss for diabetics is just not the same as weight loss for non-diabetics. And this is because the way the body is functioning in a state of diabetes is a little bit different than if somebody had normal hormone functioning. In diabetes, your hormones are not in balance. And unfortunately, the process that is going on is working against your weight loss efforts. Now, why is this happening? Well, we need to really understand the mechanism of what's going on in diabetes to really get underneath this. In diabetes, your metabolism is controlled by something called insulin resistance. Now, this is a pathologic mechanism. It's not just about the input of calories, it's about all of your hormone soup being a little bit off. Now, we need to understand what the players are here. So in diabetes, the main player hormonally is insulin. Insulin is that hormone that increases after you eat a meal because its job is to get energy that is now flooded in your bloodstream, usually in the form of glucose or sugar, gets it inside of the cells where our body does a lot of chemistry to convert that sugar into actual energy. And this is a molecule called ATP. So the issue is that when you eat a lot of food and you have this insulin resistance, your insulin levels go up like they normally should, but because the insulin doesn't really work well, or the body doesn't respond to it, is a better way of saying that, the insulin level in your body stays high. And when insulin stays high, remember, what's its job? Its job is to get energy from the blood or sugar from the blood to go inside of the cells because the goal is to store that energy for later. What happens if the insulin stays high? Your body stays in an energy storing mode. And this energy storing mode can be thought of as a fat storage mode. So the body, in a state of high amounts of insulin, cannot burn fat. No matter what you do, you might be desperately trying to, but the body is resisting this. What's happening mechanistically with a high level of insulin is that your body is trying to store energy for later, and it's usually done in the form of fat creation. And so because insulin is that hormone that increases after we eat, and its goal is to save energy for later, you end up causing this vicious cycle of you eat, your insulin goes up, your insulin stays up because your body's not responding to it. So your body stays in a fat storage mode for longer than it's supposed to. So why is the body not responding to insulin? What is insulin resistance? What causes it? Now, this is kind of a tricky concept, scientifically speaking, and I'll be really frank. The literature or the scientific evidence is not crystal clear on exactly how this happens, but we do have a lot of information that leads us to understanding it to the best that we can. So this is the most knowledge we have about this process. So we're going to use this lock and key analogy. Think of insulin like a key that fits into a door lock and unlocks it, and it opens up the door. When insulin's able to unlock a door that's on the outside of your cell, that door opens up and the sugar in your bloodstream goes and enters into the cell inside where that chemistry happens to actually make energy, which is that ATP molecule. So remember, insulin's a key. It unlocks a door on the cell, opens the door, and the energy goes in. That's what happens in a healthy person. So think of insulin resistance like this. Let's say you have insulin, which are your keys, and they're trying to unlock the doors on the cells. Now, what happens in insulin resistance is that the lock is jammed shut. So no matter what you do, the lock itself, there's something inside of it stuck. It's rusty. Somebody stuck gum in there. Come up with any reason why it's jammed shut that you'd like. But long story short, the door is jammed shut. You really can't fit a key into that lock. So no matter how many keys you have, and no matter what the key is, it's just not going to work. So how does this response get turned on? The insulin resistance is like a jammed lock. Your key, which is your insulin, won't fit into the lock and it won't work. Now, the body doesn't realize that the door is jammed shut. It doesn't realize that the problem is in the lock. It actually thinks that there just isn't a key. So what does it do? The body sends a signal to produce more keys. It thinks that having more keys available is going to fix this issue. And finally, if you have more keys or you finally find the right key, you'll be able to unlock the jammed lock. The problem is in early on diabetes, early in the disease process, the issue is not with the key. The issue is with the lock. The goal to fixing insulin resistance is not to have more keys. It's to fix the jammed and broken lock. And now, how do you actually do that? Well, you do it by fixing these 4 mistakes that a lot of people are making and that the body is dealing with in a state of insulin resistance. So mistake number 1 that people are doing that's actually making insulin resistance worse is eating too often. Okay, here's the issue. In insulin resistance and diabetes, type 2 diabetes specifically, you're going to be feeling hungry all the time. Why does this happen? Well, we mentioned this already, but the cells are not receiving the energy they need to produce chemical energy, or ATP, because the door is jammed shut. The lock is jammed shut. The energy, thus, inside of the cells is not produced properly. Glucose can't get inside the cells. And what's going to happen? Your brain is going to register that there's not enough energy in the body. And this is going to cause you to be constantly hungry and snack. Now, here's why this is actually bad. Every single time you eat, your insulin level rises. Makes sense, right? That's its job. After you eat, you consume a lot of calories. Those calories ultimately can be converted into glucose or sugar. Insulin's job is to increase at this time to allow that sugar to enter cells. So every single time you eat, insulin rises. Now, remember, this is a state of insulin resistance. We're talking about somebody who has diabetes. So the insulin's just not going to be working well in the body. The body's resistant to it. And remember the mechanism here, the body responds by making even more insulin. So if insulin stays high all day long because you've eaten so frequently that it just keeps getting spiked, what is going to result from that? The body stays in a mode of fat storage because that's insulin's job, to store energy for later. And unfortunately, then you never get into a place where you can burn your fat. So the issue is that some advisors out there are some people that tell people with diabetes to eat many small meals throughout the day, but I'd like to argue that that's very dangerous for someone with diabetes. A lot of people end up having these 5 or 6 small meals, or maybe every single time they have a meal, they're having a snack or even 2 snacks in between because they say, I'm so hungry, I'm craving things all day long. We know that that's a given because of the way this mechanism and this vicious cycle works. But by advising people to eat many small meals throughout the day, you are inadvertently making it worse because your body is always in a fat storage mode. It's going to have trouble stabilizing your blood sugar. Unfortunately, when your insulin is high all day, you'll never get into that fat burning mode. So think about this. This is not just because you have a really big appetite. You're not needing more calories than another person who doesn't have diabetes, but your brain is kind of tricking you. So I'd argue, how do we get ahead of this process? Well, you really can't fight it face on because it's kind of a losing battle. So how do you fix this? You fix this with a balanced meal rooted in what I like to call the healthy trifecta. So what is that? The healthy trifecta is this little trio of nutrients that fit inside of my perfect meal formula. If this is the first video you're watching on my channel, then welcome, but I'm going to break down for you what this is. So I designed the perfect meal formula as a very easy approach to eating balanced meals. It's rooted in the three main components that your body absolutely needs to stabilize blood sugar. I do have a free guide for you below this video. You can download my free ebook that helps you walk through step by step how to apply all of this to start making healthier, more balanced meals. So what is the healthy trifecta? It's protein, which helps keep you full, preserves your muscle, and is absolutely essential for your body. It is having enough fiber being that bulk component that comes from plant foods, lots of vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, whole grains. Fiber helps slow down sugar absorption. It improves our digestion and it keeps us full longer. All three of those things lead into better sugar stabilization. And then as well, healthy fats, essential components for our body, helps us regulate our hunger. We feel more satiety after a meal. We feel full. Meals are more delicious, and it gives us enough calories to sustain our energy for many hours after the meal. Again, all helping to stabilize blood sugar. So what's an example? What does this look like in terms of an actual meal? Well, here's a very conventional breakfast that a lot of people eat, but is absolutely sabotaging your diabetes regulation and your diabetes control. Having a piece of toast, white bread, with fruit jam and a glass of orange juice. Now, if you have thought about nutrition before, you might be realizing that all three of these things are categorized or they're classified as a carbohydrate or carbs. Challenge is our body already has trouble in diabetes regulating glucose and regulating blood sugar, and carbs are basically quick digesting molecules into simple sugars. So instead, opt for a breakfast that's rooted in the healthy trifecta that goes according to the perfect meal formula. How about eggs, avocado, vegetables like spinach? Top it with sesame seeds. You can also have this alongside a piece of, for example, 100% whole grain toast, as long as you're eating the other components with it. So what do the eggs provide us? Well, they provide us protein, and the yolk has some fat. Avocado is a very good source of healthy fat, and a lot of people don't realize it. It's actually an excellent source of fiber. Spinach itself has lots of fiber. It's a vegetable, very low in calories, very high in nutrition, lots of vitamins and minerals. And then sesame seeds, they add fiber, they add healthy fats. And then some toast, if it's the right kind of bread, it will be providing you both fiber and starch. And if you're eating all of these things together, then the starch that's in the bread is not going to wreak as much havoc on your body as that starch would if it was in isolation, meaning just that piece of bread and jam. So you get the idea. If this is confusing for you, don't worry. My guide is going to make it very digestible and easy for you to understand how to apply this. Okay, we're ready for mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 is just not getting enough protein. Now, a lot of people assume that the issue with diabetes is that you're eating too many carbs. But I always tell my patients this totally misses the story. I think that many people forget, especially when it comes to the conversation of diabetes, about a much more important nutrient, which is protein. And often when we're focusing all of the conversation on carbohydrates, we're forgetting about protein. And a lot of people are just not eating enough protein. So even if you're somebody who eats a very whole foods diet and you're eating already what you think is very healthy, but you're still not eating enough protein, I'm telling you, you're still going to be struggling to manage your blood sugar and probably to lose weight. So here's why this is a challenge. Protein is very essential to stabilize your blood sugar. It's important for fat loss because it's absolutely essential for muscle maintenance. Now, muscle is a huge organ in our body. For a lot of us, it's the largest organ by body weight. Now, some of us are not quite in balance with this, and that's okay. But for the most part, muscle on almost everyone is one of our major organs in terms of the actual quantity of tissue on our body. It's hugely important, and it is the center of our metabolism. So what we need to realize is that muscle is an active tissue. And even if you're not a competitive athlete or a crazy gym rat lifting really heavy weights, everybody needs to maintain their muscle. This is so important for our bodies, especially as we age, to prevent things like sarcopenia. Sarcopenia being muscle loss in older age, which is a huge risk factor for very big consequences that happen to us in the later stage of our lives, like falls that lead to fractures and can often lead to our demise. Without enough protein, and I really can't emphasize this enough, your blood sugar will spike after your meal. You're going to have more cravings. You're going to slow down your metabolism. And it's really essential that you understand why this happens. Remember, metabolism is the process of energy production. That is the simplest definition I could possibly give you. Metabolism is a huge topic in medicine. It's complex. It's got to do with chemistry and biochemistry and endocrinology and immunology. And there's all these different systems of our bodies that play into it. But ultimately, what you need to understand is that metabolism is the process of energy production. Now, you might be asking yourself, and I've asked myself this for years when I was studying my undergraduate studies of nutrition and then when I was in medical school, and it kind of took me a while to make this all click in my mind. Where is metabolism happening? And you might ask yourself, I don't know. Where is it happening? It's happening inside of your cells, especially inside of your muscle cells. Now, there are other organs that are metabolically active. The liver, the kidneys, bones. I mean, there's lots of organs that are doing this, and there are some organs that are not metabolically active. Tissue, such as fat cells, don't produce energy. They just store it. So the most important thing for you to understand here is that the more healthy muscle you have on your body, the better your insulin sensitivity is going to be. This is one of the trickiest concepts that I don't personally think it's tricky, but I recognize a lot of people have not made this connection. You need enough protein to support your muscles. You need enough muscles to support your metabolism. And the issue in diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes, is a metabolism issue. So by eating enough protein and supporting healthy muscles, you are supporting your insulin sensitivity. That is the straightest line you could ever draw in the body sciences towards improving diabetes. So here's how you fix this. Well, it starts with eating a meal that has enough protein in it. As a general ballpark number, I like to tell patients that this could be anywhere around 20, 25, 30 grams of protein each meal. Now, it depends on the size of your body, the amount of activity that you engage in, but both men and women need to target around this much at least. Now, there's a lot of options when it comes to protein sources. Now, I have been working in the field of nutrition for a while now. It's been about 10 years. I've been dealing with people from all different backgrounds, all different cultures, religions, philosophies, personal perspectives. I don't think that there's only one dogma of approach that is the best when it comes to choosing the healthy proteins for your body. Now, a lot of people are going to argue, no, it needs to be primarily from animal sources. Other people will argue, no, it needs to be primarily from plant sources. And I personally fall right in the middle. I think that if you're eating whole form fish, eggs, chicken, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, beans, tofu, steak, any of it is protein for your body. So you need to decide the diet and the dietary approach that really works the best for you with all of your thoughts and perspectives. I support all my patients wherever they're at, but the goal is to just get enough grams of protein. And yes, this means some people do very well by including protein powder. And protein powder is not something that I think is inherently bad. There are many different kinds of it. The goal is to get a natural protein powder that has the least amount of added chemicals and sugars as possible, with, of course, being able to handle the taste. There are some protein powders that are, in my opinion, very unpalatable. Okay, so take-home message, gotta eat enough protein. There's just no other way around it. So if you're really not sure how to structure your meal with having enough protein in it, really don't worry, because my perfect meal formula, and I have the link in the description below this video. Again, this is my perfect meal formula free ebook for you. It's going to help you understand how to stack your meals and how to structure them so that you're meeting your nutritional needs and targeting blood sugar regulation. Okay, now I think we're ready for mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 that people are unfortunately making with diabetes is that they're doing the wrong type of exercise. Now, I am a physician, I'm a doctor, so I'm always going to encourage people to do as much exercise as they can, no matter what it is. But what you really need to understand as a viewer of this video, and I'm guessing that you're somebody who's a little bit more dialed into your health than the average person, you need to understand that not all types of exercise are equal when it comes to metabolism. So the challenge is that a lot of diabetics have been given really bad advice, in my opinion, for way too long, and they're relying only on cardiovascular exercise. The reason for this is because it comes out of this old philosophy that fat was bad and everything in medicine, 40, 50 years ago was so dialed in on reducing cardiovascular disease because it was skyrocketing. The data was just like out of this world. We are having so many more people with atherosclerosis or fatty plaque disease that was leading to a crazy level of heart attacks and strokes. Don't get me wrong. This video is about diabetes and it's for people with diabetes, but cardiovascular disease is still absolutely the number one killer and the number one preventable disease that kills people every single year, both men and women. Unfortunately, it's still a huge problem. And everybody with diabetes is at higher risk for cardiovascular disease just by having diabetes. It's a really tricky situation. But the issue is that only being advised to engage in cardiovascular exercise, like running, cycling, even taking long walks or going on hikes, well, hikes is a little bit different, but just the pure cardiovascular, when you're not really deeply engaging muscle strength, this is a myth that needs to be broken because the problem is we've always thought that doing a lot of cardio is going to burn our fat. But this is really not the full picture. It actually might hurt fat loss, and I'll tell you why this happens. Cardiovascular exercise, which by definition is increasing your heart rate and getting your heart pumping, you're usually getting really sweaty. It's really good for your heart, which is important, but it's going to do little to fix the insulin resistance issue. Doing too much cardio, unfortunately, can actually increase stress hormones in our body, like cortisol, which is ultimately going to make the game of fat loss even harder for you. Now, if you're only doing cardio, especially if you're doing a lot of it without also doing weight or resistance training, you run the risk of creating muscle weakness and even muscle breakdown. Now, that is the opposite of what you'd want to do in diabetes. You want strong, healthy muscles. We already talked about the game that metabolism is happening inside of our muscle cells, and insulin resistance is an issue with the locked or jammed door. And the goal is to improve the quality of our muscles. So you need to recognize that muscle is your best friend when you have diabetes. It's absorbing your glucose. It's helping you decrease your blood sugar. It's improving your insulin sensitivity, which actually gets at the underlying mechanism of diabetes. And it's also going to help you burn fat a lot faster. And I'm sure a lot of you out there are trying to lose weight, and this is a huge component of it. Healthy, strong muscles that are engaging a lot of resistance exercise are going to help you lose weight. There's almost no situations where that's not true. So here's how you actually fix this. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. You have to be doing some kind of a strengthening exercise for your body. You have to contract your muscles. You need to engage them. Ideally, at least 2 to 3 times a week. Now, some of you might be all over the spectrum of where you are in terms of your muscle health. Some of you may be engaging in strength training exercise and you might have been doing it for decades already. And some of you may literally have never done this since you did planks or sit-ups in high school gym class. So think about it from wherever you're at. I want you to try to do the most you can at the level you currently are. This might mean you're going to start with body weight exercise. You might have to just do some sit-ups, some planks, some chair raises, walking up and down the stairs as many times as you can. It might not involve any equipment at all. You have to understand where you're at. Then you can kind of move up a notch to adding things like resistance bands. They're not physical weight that you're adding, but now you're pushing your muscles against resistance. It's still going to get the job done of increasing the strength of your muscles. So in the beginning, you might need to start kind of slow. A lot of you are going to do very well by working with a professional in this space, whether it's going to an exercise class, working with a trainer one-on-one, even following YouTube videos. At least get some guidance here. You don't want to hurt yourself, and that is a risk. So make sure you're getting the support that you need wherever you're at. But then you do want to level it up. You want to start lifting actual weight if you can. This might be something really basic like water bottles or cans of soup. It could be just 2 pounds at a time, depending on where you're at. But ultimately, you want to get to the point where if after you do 10 or 20 reps, so let's say you're doing a bicep curl and you've done it 10 times holding a can of soup, and the first time you tried this, you could only get to 5 times. Then you got to the point where you could do it 10 times without having to quit. But once that starts to feel easy, you need to get to the next level for this to still be working for your muscles. So eventually, some of you may need to start adding real weight. And this is where working with the gym trainer is so useful. Okay, I hope I made that clear. I tried to drill that point home so far because I hear so many of you who are watching my YouTube videos comment below them and you tell me your stories of hitting a plateau and really struggling with your weight loss journey, especially if you're a woman and you're in your menopausal or postmenopausal years. This is going to be really challenging for you, but one of the best things you could do for yourself is resistance training, no matter what your diet is. I mean, I really can't emphasize that enough. I'm trying to make it very clear for all of you. Okay, let's put that point to rest. Let's dive into mistake number 4. Mistake number 4 is having a poor quality of sleep. Yes, we would not be able to talk about weight loss if we weren't talking about sleep. It is just so essential for everybody, but especially for diabetics. Because a lot of diabetics don't realize how much sleep is affecting weight loss and insulin and sugar regulation and all that hormone soup that we've been talking about. The fact of the matter is, if you have poor sleep on a regular basis, this is going to ultimately increase your cortisol, which is a stress hormone. We talked about it earlier. What's going to happen? Let's actually, before we dive into the mechanism, let's take back a step. I want you to picture yourself on a day when you've had a really bad night of sleep. I've had this happen several times. It's stressful being a doctor. Some days are easier than others, and I have had trouble sleeping a good night a few times. So picture yourself. You didn't get a good night of sleep. You did not wake up feeling refreshed. You felt terrible. Well, ultimately, your body is going to increase hormones like cortisol to get your body moving because it's fighting against its desire to keep sleeping. So you're automatically increasing cortisol even higher than you normally would the first thing when you wake up. What happens is our body is tired. It sends us signals to acquire more energy in any form that it can, and that often results in increased hunger and cravings. So we didn't sleep well. We have worse level of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline in our body. We may have had more caffeine, which makes these hormones go even higher. And then we're going to have increased cravings and hunger throughout the day to try to get as much energy as we can into our body because we're just so tired. So do you see how this is really bad for insulin resistance? It's not a pretty picture. So this is bad because even one bad night of sleep can cause blood sugar spikes throughout the next day, like we just kind of talked about. But ultimately, those spikes will lead to more hunger. More hunger is going to lead to more eating, often not the best choices of food. We're probably going to be craving really sugary, salty, unhealthy snacks. This ultimately is going to slow down our metabolism, push us into an area of increased fat storage over time. You can appreciate how this is going to end up with multiple bad choices throughout our day, which can unfortunately lead us to another restless night, a night of poor quality sleep. And then we wake up the next day and guess what? Vicious cycle starts all over again. So how do you fix this? Well, it's obvious, but just because it's obvious doesn't mean it's easy to do. We have to get enough hours of sleep. The ballpark is usually 7 to 9 for most of us. Now, you will know the optimal number for you. If you're an older adult, and a lot of my viewers are, you might not need as much sleep as you used to. You might feel extremely refreshed after 6, 5.5, 5 hours of sleep. But for younger people, it's very important to engage in those longer durations of sleep as much as possible. Something that can help is that if people have trouble falling asleep, we want to make sure our temperature bedroom is set correctly. So ideally, it should be kind of a cool temperature for your body. Now, some of us have different sensitivities to temperature. Some people feel very cold when it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit in a room, and other people feel warm. So you need to figure out what's the optimal cool level for you, but you want your bedroom to be kind of cool. And it's also important to kind of set the tone for engaging in sleep. At least 30 minutes before bed, and this is not that easy, even I struggle with this, but ideally we'd want to limit our blue light exposure. Phones, tablets, TVs, iPads, etc. Turning off our email, turning off notifications, setting our phone on do not disturb. Don't check social media ideally. This is usually the worst thing you can do before bed because the way social media works is it's trying to engage your behavior and stimulate you, which is the opposite of what your brain needs to be doing at this time. And I'll be honest, I've been guilty of this many times before. Again, the goal is to do the best that we can. It's okay if it's not perfect. And then you want to ideally do a very relaxing activity before bed. Reading, could be talking to your partner, talking to your kids, talking to your parents, whoever you live with. Even doing an engaging activity like a yin style of yoga or yoga nidra. Very slow, very calming. Could be meditation, could be listening to soft music or piano, whatever it is. Set that mindset in a really calm, easy mood before you actually go to bed. It's going to set you up for more success. Okay, this has been a pretty big video, and if you're still with me here, you've probably learned a lot. Now, you at this point are knowing that there are many factors that are hindering your ability to lose weight in diabetes. So with that in mind, you've probably heard a lot of like what not to do. And I'm trying not to discourage any of you from having a hard time. I want everybody to feel as engaged with their health as possible. So let's instead turn the coin and talk about what to do, what to eat. So we talked about some of the activities before bed, for example. But if you really need some help structuring your meals, and the meals are often the culprit of our diet, it's the biggest form of calorie intake we have is at actual meals. I want to make sure that you have all the support you need. I want this to be easy for you to make balanced meals. So check out my free ebook, The Perfect Meal Formula. The link is in the description below this video. It should help you lose weight, have better blood sugar control, stop guessing what to eat and feeling confused about it. Ideally, I designed it to be your roadmap for meals that are going to work for your metabolism, not against it. So I want you to check out that link below and check out the rest of my videos up here about diabetes. If you're here and you're somebody with diabetes, there's so much I want you to learn from my channel, and I want to support you in as many ways as possible. So jump into my other videos. You're going to love them, and I'll see you in there.